Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, they are now trapped in their own criminality because really think about it. Everything is being exposed. More and more fraud is being exposed across the country. JD Vance is doing an incredible job showing the people how the criminal syndicate system actually works. The people now are seeing that the D Party, they are not for America. They're completely for criminals. They're for illegals. They're for wokeism. They're for communism. And they really like their Nazis. And the people now are seeing that. There's no doubt about it. And the people are seeing how the elections are rigged. Remember going back in time when Trump said the 2020 elections were rigged? And of course, the fake news, they said it was a big lie and he has no proof. Well, he had all the classified information, and he's always had the classified information. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing the investigations happen out in Georgia, out in Arizona, and we're watching the rigged elections in real time in California. And what's very interesting about the California elections, we had two people running for very important positions, one for the mayor of LA and one as governor. And what's very interesting, when you have two candidates running, the deep state players, they know they can't make both candidates lose. It would be very, very obvious if they use their cheating system. So it seems that they had to choose a candidate. Now, what's very interesting about this is that Spencer Pratt, he was very, very vocal. People were making videos. He was very, very vocal. He was out in the public eye. So it looks like the deep state players, they were drawn into this. Now, this could have been a setup from the Trump administration, but they were drawn into this and said, you know something? We're not going to let this big mouth guy win whatsoever. So they chose their candidate. While the other candidate, Hilton, just went ahead and took that position. And again, there was too much heat on Pratt that it would look very, very suspicious if they actually did the same thing to Hilton. And it seems that the plan might have worked here. And I don't know if Trump and team actually planned this out to get the governor or the future governor into position and to expose the entire election rigging system in real time so people could see it. Remember, there's hundreds of thousands of votes that have not been counted yet. And what's very interesting is Spencer Pratt is saying, are all the votes counted yet? So does he know something? Were votes held back on purpose? So this way they would use all their votes, they would cheat, and then all of a sudden the rest of the votes would be counted and it would be for Spencer Pratt and he would win? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the other thing that we could see is that the entire event out in Iran, it looks like it might be coming to an end. Remember, it's all about leverage in the end. When Trump makes deals, he makes sure that he has all the leverage. He makes sure the person on the other end or the country on the other end realizes they have no leverage. And sometimes you have to do certain things to show them that they do not have any leverage. And Trump has all the leverage. And this is what the bombing was about. Every step of the way, he was showing them, you do not have the leverage. And remember, the news that you hear coming out of Iran where they have control of the strait or they have weapons of mass destruction or they're able to hit different cities or they're going to attack this. Remember, this is coming out of their propaganda networks. We have propaganda networks here in the United States. It's called the fake news. And they've been using their propaganda networks to make everyone believe they were much, much stronger than they really were. They were never strong. They were told to hold the fort and make sure Trump doesn't win. Do not make a deal. We want this going on to the midterms. Because why? Because, again, it keeps the fuel prices very, very high. It hurts the economy. And they were hoping to use this against him during the midterms. Trump knew that this wasn't going to take that long. He knew that this would all be over and done with, and gas prices would drop right before the midterms. And what Trump had to do, he had to show these people, the IRGC, that there was no one that was backing them. There was no one that was coming to their rescue. There was no one that was going to stop the bombing. And he had to prove it to them over and over and over. And it seems they might have just folded right now, because I think what Trump is doing right now, he's speaking to two different governments. He's speaking to the old IRGC, and he's speaking to the new government that's going to be taking its place. And basically, the new government seems like they have much more control over the country, but he wanted the IRGC to actually surrender, agree to the deal and surrender. So this way, the new government can be put into place. And I do believe when Trump said we were going to be going into Carg Island, I don't even think he'd have to invade it. I think the government that he's been dealing with, he was going to tell the generals on the island to stand down, and Trump would just be able to take it with ease without probably a shot being fired. Maybe there'd be one or two people that tried to resist, but I think in the end, there'd be no problem whatsoever. Remember, this entire time, Trump was controlling the strait. Trump was controlling pretty much everything there. He just wanted the IRGC to say it out loud so the world could hear it. That is what he was doing. So everything that you see with the deep state players, they're losing every step of the way. There's going to be no place for them to run. There's going to be no place for them to hide. And to be blunt, the game is pretty much over. Because, again, who's in control? Trump is. Now, this doesn't mean the deep state players aren't going to fight to the very end. See, he's dismantling everything that they had to protect themselves. He's dismantling their terrorist organizations. He's dismantling the cartels. He's dismantling the gang. He's dismantling their control of oil. He's dismantling their economic system that they have created. He's dismantling everything that they put into place. So they're getting weaker and weaker every single day, which means whatever moves they're going to make, it's going to be isolated in this country. And I don't think they're going to be able to use outside terrorists, outside cartel members, outside gang members. So basically, whatever they have inside this country, that's all they have left. And Trump is leading them down this path every step of the way because he knows what they have planned. And yes, they're looking to push the riots. They're looking for a color revolution. So what do they need? They need a martyr. Now, they might be using Carmelo Anthony because, again, he murdered Austin Metcalf. And they might try to push this. I don't know if it's going to work. Or there might be some other type of an event that they might use to create the incident that they need and use that to drive their riots. But we'll have to see how this all plays out. But in the end, you can see the deep state players, they are struggling right now. And I do believe Trump now is trapping them with the Save America Act and giving them no way out of this. Trump now is saying, listen, I need you to put the Save America Act in the Reconciliation 3.0 bill right now. And by doing this, it only needs 51 votes to pass. Actually, if you really think about it, this is how Obama got the Smith-Mundt Act passed. They actually shoved it into the NDAA or the Reconciliation bill, and they were able to get it through. So Trump is kind of using the same exact tactic, and no matter which way they turn, it's the deep state players are going to have no choice but to save America, to pass the Save America Act. They could either do it this way, or when the evidence comes out about how they rigged the election right before the midterms, they'll have no choice but to do this. And I think Trump waited for the last moment to do this, so this way the deep state players won't be able to change their tactics on their approach to the midterms. So I do believe Trump has set this up perfectly, and you can see that the deep state players, they're going to be reeling from this. That doesn't mean there's not going to be riots. It doesn't mean they're not going to push events. But I think Trump now is isolating them in just inside the interior of the country instead of having things come from outside of the country. So this way, it's a lot easier to control. Now, we'll be talking a lot more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the children that went missing, because every day that passes, we can see more and more children are being rescued, either by the FBI, DHS, or both. And you can see that DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, he revealed something very, very interesting. Eric already put this out. Mark Wayne Mullen revealed some children trafficked across the Democrats' border say they were raped 600 to 700 times. I don't care, he says, who you are, liberal, independent, Republican. If you can't stand for law enforcement to find these kids, who are you? We found 146,000 kids so far. 146,000. We still have nearly 300,000 missing. We're investigating reports where some of these kids claim that they were raped 600 to 700 times. The Democrats hear this and either don't care or want to pretend it's not happening. They are traitors. They knew exactly what was happening. And Brian Cates responded to this and said, fun fact, the asshole who played the biggest role in losing all of those poor kids, including the ones who were raped, is now slated to become the next governor of California. And once again, you could see, who is this? This is Becerra. Now, is he going to be the next governor? I doubt it. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. But you could see the FBI now, it is now working for the people. It's no longer FBI 1.0 where it protects the criminal syndicate. It's now FBI 2.0 where it's actually going after the criminals. And remember, the deep state players, they didn't go after criminals because they wanted the criminals to break this and rip this country apart. And they allowed foreign entities to do whatever they wanted in this country because they didn't care about this country. And they wanted this country destroyed. That was their whole plan from the very, very beginning. This is why they allowed the illegals in. This is why they allowed criminals. This is why they have no cash bails. This is why they do all of these things. And now you can see the FBI, they are turning all of this around. National Security Division for the U.S. Department of Justice put this out and said, 13 internet domains used to target U.S. persons, including current and former security clearance holders, with access to classified and sensitive U.S. government information, were seized today by federal authorities. These domain seizures offer a glimpse at how foreign actors can use promises of easy money to lure Americans into revealing sensitive or classified information that they are duty-bound to protect. And that's coming from Assistant Attorney General John Eisenberger. Anyone approached online with offers of easy income for vague consulting work should treat those overtures with extreme caution and remain vigilant for warning signs of malicious targeting. Absolutely. And you could see that now Cash and team and the DOJ, they're cracking down on all of this. And basically, they're shutting down everything the deep state players have set up. Because you have to remember, if you go back to Hillary Clinton and you go back to Obama, what do you think they were doing? They were selling secrets to the highest bidder. And yes, the money went to their foundations. It was funneled in through NGOs. But again, why do you think she had an email server in her house? I mean, think about that. Let's use common sense here and logic. Why would you have a server in your house to handle things unless you're giving access to other countries to access the server and get that information? That is the only reason you would do that. See, the old days, what they would do is they go to a park bench. They would stick the folder under the park bench and mark it, an X with chalk. And then someone else would walk by, grab the folder. But they found an easier way to do it. You know what? Let's just set up a server. Let's keep it completely open. And let's just put everything on there. This way, they can access it whenever they want. And it's basically plausible deniability. What? People are accessing it? How could this be? And they can blame other people. This is what they've done. Now it's all going to come out that they are treasonous to this country. Step by step, Trump now is leading up to that. Remember, we had a Manchurian candidate in this country. It wasn't Biden. It was actually Obama. That's who it really was. And once again, this is all going to be coming to an end. When will it come to an end? I do believe when we get the House and the Senate, because again, there has to be major changes in the judicial system. Because if we're going to have justice, if we're going to bring charges against these people and release the indictments, we can't have crooked judges because they'll just get off. Think about what's happening with James Comey's case. Remember, this is the second time right now that they brought charges, and now he's delayed it until October. Remember, the judges today that we have in the judiciary, they work with the lawfare group to get their people off. That's why they put them in place, because they put layers of protection in to make sure that they would never be arrested. But again, once we get the House and Senate, I think most of these judges are going to resign. And you're going to see a lot of them, they're going to be impeached. And Trump is going to set up a judicial system that actually works for the people, that actually follows the rule of law. So I do believe in the end, this is all going to come to an end. And you can see the world is changing, just like the United States is changing. More and more of the people around the world are voting in the people that they want to represent them. And they're overriding whatever cheating system they have in place. When you look out in India, you can see that Narendra Modi, he won again. And Trump put this out on Truth and said, congratulations to my friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. on becoming India's longest serving prime minister, and a great one he is. He is a strong, healthy, and wise man and will have many years of greatness and success ahead of him, President DJT. And then if we look at Armenia, Trump says congratulations to Nikol Pashinyan for his decisive victory at Armenia's national election. I was very proud to have endorsed him for re-election and have no doubt that with him as the leader of the beautiful country of Armenia, it will attain levels of greatness and success beyond everyone's wild expectations, President DJT. And then we have Colombia. We have the tiger. And Trump says, congratulations to Colombian presidential candidate, the tiger. A smart, strong, and tough leader on his decisive victory in the first round of the Colombian presidential election. Abelardo fights tirelessly for and loves his great country and people, just like I do for the United States of America. As president, Abelardo will be tremendously successful in leading Colombia to grow the economy, create jobs, promote trade, stop illegal immigration, crack down on crime and drugs, and restore law and order. Abelardo will face off against a radical left Marxist in the runoff on June 21st. The results of this election are very important to the future of Colombia and its relationship with the United States, which, if the tiger wins, and because of his competence and love of his country, will have the total support and strength of the United States behind him. Because of his tremendous accomplishments in life and his political support for me, it is my honor to give Abelardo my complete and total endorsement. So, once again, you can see the world now is changing. And I do believe all of these leaders are going to come into line, and these leaders are going to be working with the Trump administration to remove the cartels, remove the gang members, remove the communism that is spread around the world. And once again, we can see that the world now is changing, and it's changing for the good. And I do believe as time goes on, we're going to see more changes. And think about it. The deep state players, they're struggling right now. They really want a war with Russia. They're really trying to push Ukraine into World War III. But every time they try to do it, it fails, because without the United States, they just don't have the funds. They don't have the weaponry. They don't have the ability. They have nothing. And a few days ago, the coalition of the willing, Starmer, Merz, Macron, and Zelensky, they met in London to hammer out the latest words on paper, a new military pledge to support Ukraine against Russia. Both British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and King Charles III agreed to a renewed military effort that included British armed forces securing Ukraine territory. This was according to their plan. 3 days later, British Defense Minister John Healey decided to resign, citing insufficient funding of military. I mean, you really can't make this stuff up. So they went through this entire exercise to create the coalition of the willing, and they have no money whatsoever to back any of this. It all just completely and utterly fell apart. Remember, without the United States, these countries can't do a damn thing. And now we can see that's absolutely true. So this is why Trump said, listen, this is not our war. It's their war. Go ahead. Go fight it. Go do it. And you know what? They're failing every step of the way. Soon they're going to be begging Trump for a peace deal. I think that's coming down the line right now. Now, the other thing that we could see happening right now is that the IRGC, they are very, very weak. And I do believe there's another government that Trump is working with. The government has gained a lot of power, and they just want the IRGC to take a knee, that Trump is bending their will to say, we are done here. And then he's going to be working with the new government. So I do believe the new government basically can talk to the generals of the IRGC and tell them to stand down. They're allowing Trump access into the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump had to show the old regime who's truly in control. This is why I do believe he was bombing Iran, to get the leverage, to show them the deep state has no more control. You don't have the leverage. I have the leverage. And if you want to continue on with this, we could just wipe out everything that you did. Because remember, during the ceasefire, it allowed the U.S. to track everything that they have. And every time the fake news comes out from Iran, it's just that. It's fake. It's propaganda. U.S. Central Command put this on an X and said, claim Iranian media sources are claiming that Iran has attacked a U.S. warship in the Strait of Hormuz. False. Truth. No U.S. warships have been struck. U.S. Central Command claim Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Truth. Commercial ships are continuing to transit in and out of the Strait of Hormuz tonight. So they have no control over this whatsoever. How do we know this? Well, U.S. forces, they disabled an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman overnight after it violated the naval blockade on Iran. So the U.S. is in control. They disabled the ship, and the only ships that are allowed in and out are ships that the Navy permits. That's it. And think about it. Trump was able to transport 22 ships out of the Strait of Hormuz with oil. Did Iran fire the missiles? Did they bring their little dinghy boats and try to stop them? Did they try to do pretty much anything? No, they didn't have the power. If Trump is able to get 22 gigantic oil tankers in and out of the Strait of Hormuz and Iran can't do anything, that means Iran absolutely has no power whatsoever. And you can see they're continually putting out propaganda. Khamenei says the post-American era has begun. February 7th, 2021. Awaken Outlaw says Iran is so cooked they're reduced to reposting idle threats on this dead goat whisperer's account that he made during the Biden presidency. That's how bad it is. Remember, when you hear the news coming out of the Iranian press, it's propaganda. It's their propaganda outlet that the deep state players use to convince you of something that's really not happening. But in reality, if you look past the propaganda and you look at what's really going on, Iran, the IRGC, they're done for. There's a new government that is formed. There's a new government that's in place. They just want the deep state to say, I give. Praying Medic put this out, and this is coming from Secretary of War Hegseth. Let's just say this command has used the ceasefire wisely and with great efficiency to ensure that we're refining our intelligence and target sets in a way that are far beyond even the beginning of epic fury. So wait, during the ceasefire, what were they doing? They were tracking everything. They knew exactly where they all were. And you could see that Iran, through their propaganda network, they're now threatening to attack Elon Musk's SpaceX and Starlink facilities in the Middle East, saying that Elon assisted the U.S. military in the attacks. Now, again, this is coming from the Iran state-owned FAR news agency. Then, of course, the fake news picks it up here in the United States, puts it out there to make you think, oh, Iran's so powerful, they're going to do something. Well, remember, Trump continually says, you want to play this game? I'm going to show you how much leverage we have. You go ahead, go attack, try it. First of all, they'll be intercepted. And if there's any damage, we're taking your money. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the Iranian regime will lose the zero-sum game it is playing. Any damage it inflicts on our allies in the Gulf will be paid for with the funds extracted from Iranian accounts. Any tolls paid to the Persian Gulf Strait Authority will be offset by funds extracted from their accounts. Every attack Iran launches will only deepen the economic and financial consequences it faces. Checkmate. So now, go ahead. Attack. The leverage with the money that you were trying to bargain with is disappearing. And it will continue to disappear. And it seems that Trump is kind of letting everyone know that, yes, he's dealing with the actual government of Iran now. He just wants the IRGC to fold. Trey Yinks put this out and said, spoke with President Trump tonight as he oversaw the U.S. military strikes against Iran from the Situation Room. The president told me he spoke directly with Iranian officials tonight who asked him to stop bombing. 49 Tomahawk missiles have been fired by the United States at the time we spoke, along with bombing from fighter jets. Closest targets to Tehran were approximately 40 miles outside the city. Trump added that the bombing will stop shortly, but that if they don't sign the agreement, we'll bomb the shit out of them. President Trump called this the most violated ceasefire in the history of the world. Vice President J.D. Vance told me the United States is dealing with both moderate and more extreme voices in Iran as part of the negotiation process. So yes, we have the old regime and we have the new government that has been formed. And for the new government to be recognized and to be put into place, the old government must bow out. And this is why Trump used the leverage of the United States to force them into a deal. Because again, the deep state players were doing what? They were telling them, do not give, do not give. We want this to go on until the midterms. We want the economy to be weaker and weaker and weaker. We want to show the world that Trump can't handle this, that he can't win this battle. That's what they were trying to do. But now it's falling apart. Because think about what Trump just did last night. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, the United States will be hitting Iran, whose Navy, Air Force, radar, anti-aircraft, and all other forms of defense, together with most of its offensive capability, are gone. Very hard tonight. At some point in the not-too-distant future, we will be taking Karg Island and other oil infrastructure points and assume total control of the oil and gas markets, much like we have with Venezuela, which is working out brilliantly for both Venezuela and the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So think about what Trump said. We'll be taking Karg Island. Well, again, he threatened the IRGC because, again, they're really not in control. I do believe the other regime would tell the generals or the military that was on Karg Island to stand down, let the military forces take the island. Now, Trump would not say that unless he had the assurances that they were going to steal down and he had a deal made. So that would be the next phase if they don't make the deal. Clandestine put out a quote from Sun Tzu, and it says, all warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When we're far away, we must make him believe we are near. Then Clandestine says, I don't think the people Trump is negotiating with in Iran are on the same team as the IRGC. That is absolutely correct. I think Trump already has a deal in place with the next regime, and they are covertly working with Trump to facilitate the transition while circumventing the rogue IRGC, and much of what we see is just theater. The Iranian people are being held hostage by this radical Islamic regime, and Trump is trying to surgically eliminate any rogue elements while not completely destroying Iran's future. We want to preserve the nation for the Iranian people and free them from the shackles of this illegitimate regime. I think there's much more going on than we can see, and that is by design. Victory is already secured. It's just a matter of a smooth transition. And I do believe that's exactly what is happening because, again, the IRGC, they do not have any power. They have a small amount of power within the country, and I think the new government that is being formed, they have control over the military. Now, the IRGC, they do have military assets on the island along with the Iranian army, and I do believe the new government has control over Karg Island. And I do believe Trump has already made a deal with them that if the IRGC does not fold, we're just going to control Karg Island. We're going to take the oil, and you can do nothing about it to stop us. The wells won't be shut down. We'll be making a huge amount of money, and we'll be flooding the market with oil, and it will destroy everything that they have done. So I do believe he used this as leverage. James E. Thorpe put this out and said, President Trump proved them wrong again. Now, as bombing intensifies, the regime's foundations are beginning to give way, not only under military pressure, but under financial siege. With key channels of regime finance cut off by operations of Secretary Percent, Tehran is discovering what every petro-authoritarian fears most, that the money stops before the missiles do. Yes, the military controls the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, the president will get his deal. And yes, investors will get a peace dividend. It's reported that President spoke directly with Iranian officials tonight who asked them to stop bombing. The solution signed the deal. This is not on the so-called experts bingo card. Think of the sequence that is now within sight. Maduro gone, the Iranian regime beaten back and potentially broken, and a genuine peace dividend emerging as markets start to price a world less hostage to revolutionary petrostates. For years, The pundit class told us none of this was possible. They said you could never dislodge Maduro without a quagmire. They said you could never bring the Islamic Republic to heel without a ground invasion. They said you could never assert control over Hormuz, keep oil flowing, and still push Iran off the nuclear brink. At every step, they were certain, and at every step, they were wrong as usual. And now they face an awkward question. What will they say as the old certainties collapse in real time? Will they finally admit they misjudged Trump's leverage, misread the vulnerabilities of these regimes, and misunderstood the strategic use of finance and force? Or will they tie themselves in knots explaining why the fall of dictators, the defeat of terror-sponsoring regime, and an emerging peace dividend are somehow just another Trumpian catastrophe? The record is clear. The only real unknown is, what will the pundits get wrong next? They're going to get everything wrong because, remember, they were in control of everything before. They never wanted Iran toppled, so they had to make a story up that it could never be done. They never wanted Maduro out, so they had to make a story that if we tried, it would be a disaster. Trump, at every step, is proving them wrong. It was all a lie from the beginning. And all Trump had to do was get the leverage that he needed against the deep state players, against the IRGC. We never needed troops. We never needed to go into Iran. They were easy to beat because, once again, who has the leverage? We do. Trump does. The United States does. They've never had the leverage. They've always been weak. They use the propaganda to make you believe they were strong. If they were so strong, they would have unleashed the sleepers. They would have unleashed their weapons of mass destruction. Where are they? They don't exist. They're gone. There's nothing there. It's been fake from the very beginning, just like when they released COVID and they made you believe this was the most deadliest pandemic ever. It was fake. That's fake. Everything they've told us is one gigantic lie. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, based on the fact that discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran have been brought to the highest level of Iranian leadership and approved, I have, as President of the United States of America, canceled the scheduled strikes and bombing against Iran this evening. Discussions and final points have been, in both concept and great detail, approved by all parties involved, including the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others. The naval blockade will remain in full force and effect until this transaction is finalized. Time and place of the signing will be announced shortly. It sounds like the deep state, the IRGC, they're done. Now, if they back out, if they try to delay it, what do you think is going to happen? Again, Trump can bomb them into nothing. They've never had any power, especially against the U.S. Now, the Department of War put this out, and it says monitoring the situation. Now, where did we hear that before? Oh, that's right, Post 1604, June 27th, 2018. We stand with the good people of Iran who are currently battling their installed regime for freedom. True rule, the people have the power. Rise up and demand they be removed. At some point, military generals will act with the will of the people simply because their soldiers are those same people and have no choice. We stand with you. We are monitoring the situation closely. Stay safe. God bless. And I do believe this entire time, the people behind the scenes with the new government, they've been rising up. As the IRGC becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, the people's government has become stronger and stronger and stronger. This is why Trump has said there's already been a regime change. Number one, the central bank, the deep state players, they don't have control over the Strait of Hormuz anymore. A regime change, number one. The second regime change is within Iran. The deep state players that propped up the IRGC, that propped up the Ayatollah, those days are coming to an end. The regime now is shifting. And now Trump will work with the new government and the Strait of Hormuz will be open. He is decentralizing the oil across the world. Remember, his main mission is to do what? Is to make America great again. How do you make America great again if we're in Iran? Well, Iran controlled the price of oil. Trump just demonstrated to everyone. If there's fear in the Strait of Hormuz, it makes oil go up. When the fear drops down, Oil goes down. What happens if the fear and the power that they projected is gone? That means there's no more centralized control of the oil price. What happens when you remove OPEC and now each nation can produce oil the way they want? What happens when you remove the sanctions on Russia and now they can sell the oil across the globe? What happens when you free Venezuela and the oil can be sold on the open market? It's called competition. What does that do for America? That brings energy prices way, way down. How does that assist us? Well, if we're going to build the country back up and we're going to bring the manufacturers back to this country, you need cheap energy. And you can't have cheap energy unless you remove the controls. Think about it. If you brought manufacturing back to this country and the deep state players, the central bankers, still controlled the price of oil, this country would never be able to survive that because they would basically make oil very, very expensive and we wouldn't be able to manufacture. Trump had to remove all of this and he needed to make us competitive against China and other nations because, again, this had to be done. This was set up for the central bankers. This was set up for the petrodollar system. This was set up to have centralized control over the world. Trump has just dismantled all of this. This is how it helps America. And now Trump is going to get what he needs. The people are going to get what they need. Because remember, we've been stripped of all of this. And Trump is returning that control back to the people of this country. And think about, since we were stripped of that, what happened during COVID? We were stripped of our rights. We were stripped of everything during this period of time, and we were lied to. And you could see now that information is coming out that shows that Fauci, he had contact with the intel community, that Fauci was involved with COVID. Fauci knew all about it. Senator Rand Paul released documents showing that former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Dr. Anthony Fauci had deep decades-long ties with the U.S. intelligence community that predate the COVID-19 pandemic by nearly 20 years. In the timeline produced by the chairman of the Senate Committee of Homeland Security and Government Affairs, Paul chronicles extensive communication and contacts between Fauci and spy agencies. For instance, when private emails show him alarmed by the COVID-19 virus engineer-looking features in January 2020, Fauci helped orchestrate the proximal origin paper that publicly dismissed a lab origin and said argue that the virus emerged naturally. Fauci then quietly fed the same NIH-funded narrative back to the intelligence community during the Biden's 90-day review of the pandemic. And according to Paul's timeline, in August 2003, Fauci formally reviewed and provided feedback that was incorporated into the National Intelligence Council unclassified paper on SARS implications for the United States. He was later thanked by name for his contributions when the paper was published later that month. In November 2003, Fauci received a copy of the CIA report titled The Darker Bioweapons Future, which warned that advances in biotechnology could enable the creation of far more dangerous engineered pathogens. The same month, he was forwarded an NAS report on biotechnology and bioweapons for a scheduled meeting with the Center for International Security Studies. In September 2003, Fauci was invited to participate in an October 1st Threat Reduction Advisory Committee review of the Department of Defense Chemical and Biological Defense Program Direction. In September 2007, Fauci was invited by Robert Joseph, Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, and Ash Carter to participate in an outside expert review panel commissioned by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency to assess future directions for its chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear activities. The panel met in the fall of 2007 with a report due by February 2008. So he's been in contact over and over and over with the CIA. So how do you think this all happened? He tried to cover his tracks. He tried to say this was done naturally. But again, his attempts completely and utterly failed. Colonel Tanner Watkins responded to all this and said, anyone who thinks Fauci did any of this without the intel community has zero understanding of the intel community. And by intel community, I mean CIA. The CIA and its predecessor protected Mengele and Ishii. You don't think Dr. Health was protected to improve your health, do you? There were over 1,000 of these monsters the CIA used and protected. The same people killing is on foreign battlefields, set up NATO's secret armies to orchestrate foreign and domestic terror events, orchestrate government overthrows to generate massive human trafficking operations, are not doing it because they care about your health. It's a matter of time before the connection of Fauci to Nazis and fascist Japanese doctors is established, and you can thank the CIA and their masters and fellow INTO brethren for all of it. Absolutely. And yes, that day is coming. As more and more evidence is being produced and dripped out to the public, the people are going to learn. And yes, you're going to see all this across the board all come out, slowly but surely. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a grand jury that's impaneled that's investigating Fauci right now. Let's see how that all plays out. But again, like we said from the very, very beginning, what people are starting to realize is that the Democrats are completely against America. And everything that they do, they prove it every single time. The Oversight Committee put this out and said 200 Democrats just voted against stopping fraud in America. $9 billion lost in Minnesota, dozens arrested. They still want to protect criminals who steal your tax dollars. Never forget it. And again, why would they do this? Because they're criminals themselves. Think about it. They just had the Act Blue CEO in front of Congress, and she pled the Fifth Amendment because she's a criminal. And criminals do what criminals do. So again, she can't answer the questions because that would probably implicate her in the crime. MJ Truth Ultra put this out and said, "This is quietly happening today. Act Blue CEO invokes Fifth Amendment 22 times during House probe into foreign donation vetting. The only reasons you plead the Fifth, to avoid providing evidence that could lead to their own criminal charges, because the question touch on potential illegal activity. Their testimony could expose their crimes, their organizations, or associates to investigation. As she said, on the advice of her counsel, she's trying to avoid a perjury trap where she knows she did something wrong, and this avoids her going on record." Joe Lane says, "No wonder she pled the Fifth. All the money in the world isn't going to prevent her from going to prison. Obama and Soros can't protect her. The only question is this: will she flip? Is another bird about to sing? Maybe. Maybe not." Brian Cates responded to this and said, "The entire Act Blue legal team jumping ship a year and a half ago should have told everybody how bad this was. They didn't even attempt to hang around and argue about this. They knew once the government gangsters in bed, with them lost control of the federal law enforcement, what the money trail was going to show when this was investigated. When Trump won in 2024 and they saw this was coming, every freaking lawyer jumped ship. And now she's literally sitting there all by herself holding the bag. Which means most likely she's going to sing like a bird. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the Somali fraudster, Saeed Abdullah, has surrendered to the FBI after fleeing to Kenya. So this is the first arrest from the new most wanted fraudster list, which is very, very interesting. So that's interesting that they said Kenya. Now, who else might flee to Kenya? We know there's a post out there that said when everything starts to fall apart around the deep state players, Obama is going to flee to Kenya to hide. But can he do that? No, because the United States and Kenya have an extradition agreement in force. It is based on the 1931 extradition treaty between the United States and the United Kingdom. After Kenya gained independence in 1963, the two countries formally agreed via an exchange of notes in 1965 to continue applying this treaty between the U.S. and Kenya. This agreement entered into force on August 19, 1965. The U.S. Department of State's treaty in force 2025 explicitly lists it under Kenya's law enforcement section. It appears in the U.S. Code list of extradition treaties, 18 U.S.C., Section 3181 references. Kenya's own government compendium recognized it as a bilateral extradition treaty with the U.S. The U.S. State Department reports from 2015 to 2016 state that extradition between the two countries is governed by the 1931 U.S.-UK treaty. So right there, that should tell you everything you need to know. And actually, when you start to look at it, you could see everything the deep state players have set up, it's completely and utterly falling apart. And now the Democratic Party is known for what? Well, it seems that they're known for being communist, being criminals. I mean, it's a weird combination of a lot of different things. I think James Lindsay, anti-communist, says it the best. The Democratic Party now is some weird combination of communists, Nazis, globalists, and nonprofit grifters. And their base is mostly hobos, terrorists, and mentally ill women with tenuous grasps on reality and anxiety disorders of high rank. That is exactly what the people see now. And again, they're going to go up against common sense people that think logically. So you're going to see a Nazi, you're going to see a communist, you're going to see a lot of wokesters, you're going to see the far, far left. This is what they're going to use to battle common sense. The majority of America uses common sense. And think about it. Trump, I think he played a fast one on the deep state players. Now, he wanted the FISA extension, or he wanted FISA passed. This was going to be the clean version. And the U.S. House, they decided to use this as blackmail. And the U.S. House rejected a short-term FISA extension supported by President Trump, and it's set to expire on Friday. So basically, they said, listen, we want Bill Pulte out, and basically, if you don't remove him, we're not going to pass FISA. So what did Trump do? He said, okay, well, I'm keeping Bill Pulte in as acting DNI, and I'm going to be looking for a new person to nominate. Now, they can either confirm him or they can keep Bill Pulte. So who did he nominate? Well, he nominated highly respected Jay Clayton, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, the former head of Sullivan and Cromwell, one of the most prominent and successful law firms anywhere in the world, and the current United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, to be the next director of national intelligence and, more importantly, to serve in Trump's cabinet. Few people, he says, anywhere in the legal community are respected at the level of Jay. I encourage the United States Senate to confirm Jay as soon as possible. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So it seems like Trump set them up. Confirm him quickly, and you get Jay Clayton. Don't confirm him, well, acting DNI Pulte stays in place. Now, if you confirm Jay Clayton, pass the FISA. So no matter which way you look at this, Trump's going to win. He's got them exactly where he wants them. This is what they wanted. They wanted Pulte out. Okay, here's Clayton. Here you go. So you're going to have to make a decision at this point. So if you reject Clayton, Pulte stays. So once again, they're going to have to make a decision. Trump is just sitting back waiting for that decision. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and this is where Trump might have set this all up, because, again, we had two candidates running in California. One was Steve Hilton. The other one was Spencer Pratt. Now, Spencer Pratt was very, very local. He had all these incredible videos. He showed his home being burnt down. He put them in the spotlight. He demolished them during the debates. And basically, the people were with him. Then we had Steve Hilton, a little bit more quieter, kind of in the background. Trump endorsed him. And then we had the elections. Now, they couldn't do both elections at the same time and make it where both of the candidates lost. Because, again, it would look very, very suspicious. And there'd be too much heat, as Trump says. He says they're cheating dogs. Trump calls out rigged California election, says there was too much heat to rob Steve Hilton. So they had to make a decision. Which candidate do you go after? You go after the loudmouth to show the world that he can't win, or do you go after the quiet one? So I think Trump kept Steve Hilton pretty quiet, did his campaigning, because he really wanted Hilton to be the next governor of California. Then he would be able to show everyone the cheating in California with Pratt. Pratt, I do believe, has the votes. He has the people's votes. And I think what they did was they said, okay, which one are you going to go for? You going for Pratt? Perfect. Go ahead, throw all the votes, throw all the fake ballots at Pratt, and bring your third place person to second place by a lot. So they used everything they had to bring Ramen Noodle to second place. there's still a lot of votes that still haven't been counted. They're just sitting there. I wonder who they're for. Because Spencer Pratt says, are they done counting yet? So that's very, very interesting. Let's see how this all plays out. Now, think about what else Trump is doing to mitigate the cheating, especially out in California, which we just saw. Remember, all this is about exposing the elections, showing the people that they've been using a system to cheat you out of your vote for a very, very long time. Now Trump, like we know, he put together an executive order, and he's directing the U.S. Postal Service to deliver the ballots and track the ballots. Eric Doherty put this out and said, pursuant to President Trump's election integrity executive order, the U.S. Postal Service could refuse to deliver mail-in ballots for states who block handing over the voter rolls. The rolls are needed to ensure only valid citizens vote. Yes? Stop the mail-in cheating. No voter rolls equals no mail. CNN panics. State election officials could soon face a stark choice: hand over voter lists to the Trump administration or risk losing Postal Service delivery for mail-in ballots. The order requires DHS to create a list of U.S. citizens with the help of the Social Security Administration. Require that Postal Service only sends mail-in ballots to approved voters. Require unique barcode tracking to secure envelopes. So basically, he kind of has them where he wants them, because now they have to make a choice. So this puts a huge dent in their cheating system. Remember what Elon did going way, way back. They cleaned up the Social Security numbers. They removed all the Social Security numbers that were attached to nobody, to dead people. The only ones that are left are the actual citizens of this country. Think about it. Every step of the way, Trump was putting all this in place to stop their cheating. So let's see. He has the ability to make sure, without the Save America Act, that everyone is a citizen just by doing this, and puts the cheating states in a very difficult position. And think about what else is coming. The one-day voting is going to be ruling by the Supreme Court. So we'll have citizens voting. There'll be one-day voting. No ballots can come in after the one-day voting. And all we need is paper and voter ID. So he's getting very, very close to all of this. Now, once the Save America Act is passed, he can ride the executive order on the Save America Act. If the Save America Act isn't passed, he can show it's a national security threat, and we need this. Even with the Save America Act, he can say it's a national security threat, and we need the executive order. But again, it's much, much better if it rides on top of the Save America Act. And you can see this is what Trump is pushing. We'll get to that in just a sec. But the other thing that we could see is Trump now is shutting down the birthplace citizenship. So the State Department has ended the scam that sent hundreds of pregnant women to the U.S. So basically, they're removing the U.S. visa privilege because it's not a right. And they're removing this from many different countries, making it impossible for people to come over, pregnant foreigners, to come over and give birth in this country. Remember, he wants the ruling from the Supreme Court. Actually, this case now is in the Supreme Court. But he's taking steps now to block the people that are trying to come into this country if they're pregnant from other countries. Very, very interesting. And for those people that believe that, oh, the D's are going to win, the D's are going to cheat, they're going to wipe us, out of the House and the Senate, it's ridiculous. Once Trump mitigates their cheating, which he's already doing, the D's will not be able to win another election. Actually, I think this is going to be a red wave like we've never seen before. Clandestine put this out and said, I find it amusing that some people think Trump is just blissfully unaware about the upcoming midterms. Meanwhile, in reality, red states have been gaining seats by legally redrawing congressional maps. Trump is about to sign the Secure America Act, which fully funds ICE DHS, which he has hinted will be involved in election security, a necessary precursor to the Save America Act and or EO to secure elections. Trump also planned for our operations in the Middle East to be concluded before the midterms. Gas prices will be down, stock market will be up, and Trump will have all the positive optics. Then there's also Russia, Ukraine, which, if he were to settle a deal between now and the midterms, would be a massive feather in his cap, a huge boost for the GOP candidates. Then there's all the fraud investigations, criminal referrals for Walt Ellison in Minnesota, treasonous conspiracy cases, etc., which could be used to damage the Dems' optics leading up to the midterms. Any matter of exposure, declassification, or October surprise could be deployed. My point is, Trump is setting himself up to be in a prime position heading into November, and it's not an accident. He's extremely aware about the midterms, and pieces are slowly moving into place. Combine all the positive optics with better congressional maps, election security, peace deals, etc., and the Dems are facing an historic bloodbath in November. Timing is everything. Trump knows exactly what he's doing. Trust Trump. Absolutely. And think about what he just did with the Save America Act. He said, no other president has ever been more committed to both rebuilding our great military and saving our great country. And now is the time to make it happen for generations to come. I hereby calling on Republicans in Congress to immediately advance and pass the forthcoming $350 billion reconciliation bill, Recon 3, which, at the request of our great Department of War, will include the Save America Act as well. No games, no delays, and no weak compromises. Do this ASAP. This is a generational investment in our military, even bigger than President Reagan's. Recon 3 is the only path to a full $1.5 trillion military budget our warriors need to in order to build the arsenal of freedom. We will defend the homeland with the Golden Dome, launch the unstoppable Golden Fleet, dominate the skies with the F-47 and B-21, and supercharge our ammunition stockpiles, and achieve total Space Force and drone dominance. This budget reignites American industry, creates hundreds of thousands of high-paying American jobs, and secures our global dominance without fueling inflation. Also, with the Save America Act, it will protect our elections for generations to come. Our warriors protect our most sacred rights, and voting is at the top. Time to defend the right for every American. Pass all $350 billion and the Save America Act to secure the nation for our children and our grandchildren. The Save America Act. All voters must show photo ID identification. All voters must show proof of citizenship. No mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, and military or travel. No men and women's sports. No transgender mutilization surgery for our children. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So think about what just happened here. Trump now is saying attach this to the bill. And think about it. Go back a little bit in time. Truth Hammer 4, EVA, put this out and said, interesting symmetry. If Save America Act passes this way, because this is how Obama got the Smith Modernization Act passed, he slipped it into back of the military bill. Any comment, Barack Obama? Is Trump doing this to troll the way you made propaganda legal? Most likely, yes. So why does this help? Well, Eric Darty explains. President Trump just added the Save America Act to this $350 billion Pentagon reconciliation package, which only needs a simple majority, 50 votes plus J.D. Vance to pass. That is it. Can the Republicans do it? Yes, if Susan Collins votes. Now think about it. Trump just endorsed her. She's going against Graham Plattner. The elections are coming up. Would we have enough votes? Absolutely. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. And think about it. The whole mission here is about taking back the country. The whole mission is to remove the deep state players, to remove their power structure that they've created across the globe. And the only thing they have left is to call everyone a racist. And that's what they've been doing from the very beginning. Anytime you come out against them, that's the word they use. And I think C3 sums it up perfectly. Be afraid to be called a racist or save Western civilization. Those are your only choices. Choose wisely. The future of the world depends on it. And that's absolutely true. And you can see that the entire world is changing right now. And basically, all the other countries, they're not lost. America is not lost. And it seems Brevel Leipolgam, he decided to look at what has been going around the world and basically used math to see what are our odds of succeeding in beating the deep state players. And this is what he says. I'm often asked if I really believe the West is going to win. So I did the math coldly with the data, not with hope. Here are the odds. First, let's concede everything that needs conceding. Wokeism still holds the university, it holds the administrations, it holds an entire generation of college-educated millennials settled into mid-level positions for 30 years. Only 5% of companies have actually scrapped their DEI programs. The rest have just changed the labels. The vocabulary dies, but the nomenclature stays in place. Anyone tells you it's already won is lying to you. Now look at the curves. The economists measure the presence of woke ideas in 4 areas: public opinion, media, universities, companies. Everywhere the same curve. Rise in 2015, peak in 2021, 2022, continuous decline since. White privilege appeared at 2.5 times per million words in the major American press in 2020. 3 years later, zero point 0.4. Among American students, non-binary identification has been cut in half between 2022 and 2025. Support for BLM is collapsing year after year. An ideology doesn't die when you refute it. It dies when it stops recruiting, and it has stopped recruiting. In the voting booths, it's historic realignment. For the first time in modern history, anti-system parties are simultaneously leading in 3 major economies of Europe. Reform is crushing everything in the UK, with Starmer at minus 61 net popularity, the AfD ahead of the CDU, the RN higher than ever. Italy governed, Austria, Portugal, the Netherlands tipping, Trump reelected, Milei turning Argentina around live. This isn't a wave. It's the entire Western Bloc rejecting the same software at the same time. Why now? Because the ideology made the mistake that its previous version took 70 years to make. It took power. An opposition ideology is irrefutable. An ideology in power produces results. From 2020 to 2024, it governed, and reality started sending its refutations again. Like Budapest, 1956, like the boat people. Everyone saw the unimaginable cities, the collapsing schools, the BLM founders buying 4 mansions with the cause's money. The people didn't need to read Foucault. They looked at who was getting rich, preaching sacrifice. And then there's the factor that neither the USSR nor French theory ever had to face. In 2024, Peter Thiel dines with Elon Musk. Thiel tells him, if Trump loses, I'm leaving the country. Elon replies, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. Thiel goes home and 2 hours later understands that what he just heard. Elon no longer believes in Mars as a refuge because the socialist government and the woke AI would follow him to Mars. The man who builds rockets to leave Earth had just concluded the escape was impossible. What did he do with that despair? He didn't emigrate. He bought the global public square, broke the censorship monopoly, put his fortune into the fight. This man is now on track to become the first trillionaire in human history, and he has made the destruction of this ideology an explicit goal. Never throughout the entire Cold War did the free world have an asset like this. Soviet dissidents typed Samadats on typewriters. We have the rockets, the AI models, and the information distribution network in the hands of people who have chosen our side. That leaves the underlying mechanism, the one almost no one sees. Wokeism is a political economy of scarcity. It needs gatekeepers who control access to careers. It needs commissars between you and the outcome. It needs spots to be scarce for their redistribution to make sense. Its peak was COVID. Populations immobilized, dependent on official channels. Every interaction subject to authorization. The peak of the globalist project and the woke peak fall in the same year in all the data. It's not a coincidence. It's the same phenomenon. AI destroys all 3 pillars at once. It pulverizes the degree as a toll. It replaces the organization and its commissars with an individual and their agents. It breaks the zero-sum game by creating cognitive abundance. An ideology of scarcity management doesn't survive the end of scarcity. Economic Marxism didn't survive the Glorious 30. It had to mutate into cultural Marxism. This time, the mutation has nowhere to go. AI also attacks the narrative monopoly. One single condition, that AI remains in the hands of the builders. A captured AI would be the exact opposite, the political commissar installed in every pocket. That's the only scenario of a total defeat. And AI put it at 5 to 10%. So here are my odds laid out publicly so people can judge me on them. Loss of woke culture hegemony by 2030, 90 to 95%. It's almost already done. Loss of institutions by 2035, 50 to 65%. That's the battle of the decade, the toughest one. Civilization victory for the West by 2040, 60 to 7% conditioned on single variable, who writes the values into the machines. Probability that in 15 years, we'll look back on 2020 to 2024 as the historical peak of wokeism, its own 1977, the maximum extension just before the ebb, 85%. So no, the UK isn't finished. France isn't finished. In 1975, the builders were apolitical and the clerics had the narrative monopoly. In 2026, the builders own the channels and have entered the battle. It's an unprecedented reversal of the balance of power since 1966. Declinism isn't lucidity. It's the enemy ideology spinning in your head and making you do its work for free. There's never been as much hope for the free world, the real one, not the 1989 mirage. Get to work. And that's absolutely true. And you can see this is why Trump wants the data centers, because the builders must control the flow of information, must control the truth, must control the real history. If you left it up to the World Economic Forum, we would not be able to win, because AI would control everything that they wanted. It would control their narrative. It's almost like what we saw before Trump came into play. The criminal syndicate controlled everything. They had their propaganda outlets. That was the fake news. They controlled the FBI, DOJ, DHS, CIA. They controlled the judiciary. They controlled the states. They controlled all of that to push their narrative. Every step of the way, what has Trump, Elon, and the rest been doing? They've been ripping it apart because that's the information that they used. When they lost control of the information, what happened? They lost control of the narrative. It started to fall apart. And now AI, that's why the Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, saying AI is something that we must control. AI is the future, because they knew if they had control of AI, they would control everything. Why do you think Trump wants to build the data centers? Why do you think Trump is focusing on AI? Because, again, it's our AI, the people's truth, against their AI. We're going to win. Why? Because the patriots are in control. And why do I say this? Well, it looks like the Republicans put out a post, shows President Trump, and it says patriots in control. They keep sending us this message. I wonder why. Because you know why? We're truly in control. That is why. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.
Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Lasst es euch gut gehen, seid sicher und vor allem seid vorbereitet. Vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein. Übrigens, dabei sein könnt ihr auch beim YouTube-Kanal X22-Reports-de.